Master yourself first before trying to control the world. The modern world rewards reaction. It encourages speed over reflection, expression over understanding, and control over acceptance. Many live with the quiet belief that if they could just manage events better, influence others more effectively, or secure enough certainty, peace would finally arrive. Yet, the more energy spent trying to shape the world, the more unstable the inner life becomes. Stoic philosophy begins from a different starting point. It does not promise control over circumstances, outcomes, or other people. It offers something more demanding and more reliable: mastery of the self. The Stoics observed that most human suffering does not come from what happens, but from how the mind responds. Anger grows when we expect fairness from an unfair world. Anxiety grows when we demand certainty from a future that offers none. Frustration grows when we tie our sense of worth to forces outside our command. This is not a call to withdrawal or indifference. It is a call to precision, to place effort where it belongs, to stop wasting attention on what cannot be commanded, and begin cultivating what can. Judgment, intention, character, response. In a time of constant stimulation, outrage, and comparison, inner discipline appears almost unnatural, yet it is the only form of strength that cannot be taken, cancelled, or disrupted by chance. The Stoics understood that a person who has not mastered their own reactions will never truly influence the world in a meaningful way. They will be driven by fear, pulled by desire, and shaken by every change of fortune. This reflection is not about becoming passive or detached from life. It is about becoming steady within it. Before attempting to correct the world, shape outcomes, or impose order on chaos, the first task remains unchanged. Across centuries,
Master yourself first.
The first discipline of Stoicism is clarity about control. Not philosophical clarity, but lived clarity. The kind that shapes how you respond when things go wrong, when people disappoint you, when plans collapse, when the world refuses to cooperate with your expectations. Epictetus stated it plainly: some things are up to us, and some things are not. This distinction sounds simple, yet most people live as if it were false. They invest emotional energy into outcomes, opinions, recognition, timing, and fairness. They try to manage how others behave, how quickly life should improve, how the future ought to unfold. When reality resists, frustration follows. When resistance continues, anxiety and bitterness take root. What is not under your control is vast. The behavior of others, the economy, politics, trends, random events, the past, illness, aging, reputation. Once it leaves your hands, even the final outcome of your best efforts, none of these submit to willpower. To demand otherwise is not strength, it is confusion. What remains under your control is smaller but sufficient. Your judgments, your intentions, the meaning you assign to events, the discipline of your attention, the actions you choose in this moment, your willingness to act with integrity, regardless of outcome. This is where Stoicism places responsibility, not because it is comforting, but because it is accurate. Modern life constantly blurs this boundary. Social media gives the illusion of influence, while quietly training emotional dependence on approval. News cycles provoke outrage without offering agency. Work culture encourages over-identification with results that depend on many forces beyond your effort. The mind becomes restless, reactive, and exhausted, not because life is unusually cruel, but because attention is misallocated. Stoicism does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to care correctly, to act fully where action is possible, and to release demand where it is not. When you do your work carefully, honestly, and with skill, your responsibility ends there. Whether it is praised or ignored does not belong to you. When you speak truthfully and act justly, you have fulfilled your role. Whether others accept it is outside your jurisdiction. This is not resignation, it is precision. A disciplined archer focuses on stance, breath, aim, and release. Wind and distance remain uncertain. The Stoic mind functions the same way. You prepare thoroughly, you act deliberately, you accept the result without self-pity or arrogance. Much of modern anxiety comes from treating life as a negotiation with reality. If you worry enough, plan enough, monitor enough, perhaps uncertainty will yield. It never does. The future remains unmoved by nervous anticipation. Fear does not grant control. It only erodes the present. Anger follows a similar pattern. It arises when reality violates an expectation you believed was owed to you. Respect, fairness, recognition. When these are withheld, the untrained mind reacts with hostility, as if the world has committed a personal offense. Stoicism reframes this entirely. The world does not owe alignment with your preferences. People act according to their understanding, limitations, and incentives. To expect otherwise is to misunderstand human nature. This does not excuse injustice or passivity. It clarifies where power lies. You can oppose wrongdoing without poisoning your own character. You can work to improve conditions without surrendering inner stability to every obstacle. The Stoic does not confuse emotional agitation with moral seriousness. Calm is not apathy, it is readiness. Consider how often the mind drifts toward hypothetical futures, imagined failures, imagined losses, imagined humiliation. These scenarios feel urgent, yet they are entirely mental. Stoicism teaches that suffering in advance does not prepare you. It weakens you. The future will arrive on its own terms, carrying challenges that cannot be rehearsed perfectly. Strength is built now, in how you manage judgment, not in endless mental simulation. Control of attention is central here. What you repeatedly attend to becomes your inner climate. If your attention is constantly drawn to outrage, comparison, fear, and noise, calm will feel unreachable, not because calm is impossible, but because it is never practiced. The Stoic does not wait for peace to appear. He creates the conditions for it through deliberate focus. This often requires restraint, choosing not to engage with every provocation, choosing not to express every opinion, choosing silence when speech would be driven by ego rather than reason. In a culture that rewards visibility and reaction, restraint appears weak. In truth, it is one of the highest forms of control. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that it is possible to live well even in a palace full of noise and corruption, not by controlling the palace, but by governing his own mind within it. The same applies now. You do not need ideal conditions to practice discipline. You need clarity about where effort belongs. When you attempt to control what cannot be controlled, you become tense, resentful, and brittle. When you neglect what can be controlled, you become scattered and impulsive. Stoic discipline restores balance by narrowing concern to what is yours. This is not a one-time realization. It is a daily practice. Each irritation, delay, insult, or disappointment presents the same question: is this within my control or not? If it is, act with care. If it is not, release demand, not dramatically, not with suppression, with understanding. The world will continue to be unstable. People will remain inconsistent. Outcomes will remain uncertain. None of this prevents a steady inner life. What prevents it is the refusal to accept reality as it is. Mastery begins here, not with changing circumstances, but with correcting the direction of effort. When you stop trying to govern the uncontrollable, energy returns, attention sharpens, action becomes cleaner. You are no longer dragged by events, but moving deliberately within them. This is the foundation. Without it, every attempt to improve life becomes a struggle against the current. With it, even difficulty becomes workable. Once the boundary of control is understood, a more difficult task begins. Emotional mastery. Not suppression, not denial, mastery. The Stoics never taught the elimination of emotion. They taught responsibility for it. Emotions arise from judgments, and judgments can be examined. This is where most people resist, because it removes the comfort of blame. Desire is the first source of inner disturbance. Desire not for survival or basic well-being, but for excess certainty, admiration, dominance, and validation. Modern life amplifies this endlessly. The mind is trained to want more visibility, more approval, more speed, more security. Each desire quietly contains a demand that reality conform to it. When reality does not comply, frustration follows. Seneca warned that desire makes slaves of those who believe it must be satisfied. The object itself is rarely the problem. It is the belief that fulfillment depends on it. When peace is postponed until conditions improve, peace never arrives. The Stoic does not eliminate desire, but disciplines it. He asks whether the desire strengthens character or weakens it, whether it aligns with reason or feeds restlessness. Fear operates in the same way. Fear of loss, fear of irrelevance, fear of being left behind. These fears often appear rational, but they are judgments about the future presented as facts. The mind imagines harm and reacts as if it were already present. Stoicism intervenes at the level of judgment. The event has not occurred, only an image has appeared. Images do not deserve obedience. Emotional reactions feel automatic, but they are not uncontrollable. There is always a brief space between impression and assent. This space is small, but it is sufficient. In that space, reason can speak. The Stoic trains himself to pause, to ask whether the impression deserves belief, to refuse immediate agreement with every emotional signal. Anger deserves special attention. It often disguises itself as strength, as moral clarity, as justified response to wrongdoing. Yet anger rarely improves judgment. It narrows perception and accelerates action beyond reason. Marcus Aurelius described anger as a temporary madness, not because injustice is unreal, but because agitation harms the one who carries it. Stoicism does not demand indifference to injustice. It demands proportion. You can oppose wrongdoing without becoming consumed by it. You can act firmly without surrendering clarity. When anger takes control, the mind becomes reactive. When reason leads, action becomes deliberate. Resentment is anger extended over time. It is the refusal to release a grievance. It feels like self-protection, but it corrodes character. The Stoics observed that resentment binds you to the very thing you claim to oppose. Your thoughts return to it. Your mood depends on it. Your peace is held hostage by someone else's behavior. To release resentment is not to approve of harm. It is to refuse to carry its weight indefinitely. The past cannot be altered by continued indignation. What can be altered is the shape of your present mind. Stoicism chooses freedom over rehearsal of injury. Ego presents a subtler challenge. It hides behind identity, status, and self-image. The need to be seen as competent, respected, intelligent, or righteous. When ego is threatened, emotions surge: defensiveness, shame, aggression. Much emotional turmoil is not about events, but about perceived damage to self-image. Stoicism dismantles this gently but firmly. It reminds you that reputation is external. It belongs to others. To base inner stability on how you are perceived is to surrender sovereignty. The Stoic grounds worth in character, not applause; in effort, not outcome; in alignment with reason, not affirmation. This requires humility, not performative humility, but realistic humility. The acknowledgement that you are limited, fallible, and temporary. Ego thrives on illusion of permanence and centrality. Stoicism restores scale. You are a small part of a vast process. Your role matters, but it is not absolute. Emotional mastery also involves discomfort. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship not as punishment, but as training, to reduce fear of loss, to weaken dependence on comfort. Modern life minimizes friction, yet maximizes anxiety. When the mind never experiences chosen difficulty, it becomes fragile. Small disruptions feel catastrophic. By occasionally accepting discomfort deliberately, you remind yourself that survival does not depend on constant ease. This builds quiet confidence, not bravado. Resilience. You stop fearing minor deprivation because you know you can endure it. Social pressure remains one of the strongest forces shaping emotion. The fear of exclusion, ridicule, or misunderstanding keeps many in constant tension. Stoicism counters this by restoring allegiance to reason over crowd opinion. The majority is not a measure of truth. Popularity is not a sign of virtue. This does not mean withdrawal from society. It means participation without surrender. You can engage fully without letting approval govern your inner state. This is difficult. It requires accepting that misunderstanding is sometimes the cost of integrity. Emotions will still arise. Stoicism does not promise serenity at all times. It promises clarity about what emotions mean and how to respond to them. Sadness may appear in loss. Concern may appear in uncertainty. Even fear may appear in danger. The difference lies in whether these emotions rule the mind or inform it. A disciplined mind observes emotion without being dragged by it. It asks what judgment produced it. It corrects where correction is needed. It accepts where acceptance is appropriate. Over time, emotions lose their tyranny. They become signals, not commands. This work is slow. There is no transformation through insight alone. Habits of reaction are built over years and dissolve through practice. Daily life provides endless opportunities. A delay, a criticism, an unexpected obstacle. Each one tests whether reason or impulse will lead. Modern culture often treats emotional expression as authenticity. Stoicism treats emotional responsibility as maturity. To feel is human. To be ruled by feeling is optional. Mastery is not coldness, it is steadiness. When desire no longer dictates worth, when fear no longer predicts catastrophe, when anger no longer commands action, something changes. The mind becomes quieter, not empty, clear. From this clarity, action becomes more effective, not less. You stop reacting to appearances and begin responding to reality. This is inner freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from unnecessary suffering. It cannot be granted by circumstances. It must be cultivated. The final discipline of Stoicism confronts what the modern mind works hardest to avoid: impermanence, change, loss, death, not as abstract ideas, but as constant conditions of life. Much inner turmoil comes from resisting what cannot be negotiated. The Stoics did not remove this resistance through optimism or denial. They removed it through acceptance, grounded in reason. Fate, in Stoic thought, is not superstition. It is the recognition that events unfold through causes beyond individual will. You did not choose the time you were born into, the body you inhabit, the family that shaped you, or the era that defines your challenges. You did not choose many of the obstacles you face. To argue with these facts internally is to waste energy on what has already been decided. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means alignment with reality. The Stoic asks not why this happened, but how to respond well now that it has. Resistance says this should not be happening. Acceptance says this is happening, and I will meet it with dignity. Modern culture often confuses acceptance with weakness. In truth, refusal to accept reality is one of the greatest sources of weakness. It produces bitterness, paralysis, and endless mental conflict. Acceptance clears the mind for action. It allows effort to be applied where it still matters. Impermanence applies not only to hardship, but to success. Status fades, strength declines, recognition shifts. What is admired today is forgotten tomorrow. The Stoic does not anchor identity in what time will erase. He appreciates what is present without clinging to it, enjoyment without dependence, engagement without illusion of permanence. This attitude protects against both arrogance and despair. When things go well, there is gratitude without intoxication. When things fall apart, there is sorrow without collapse. Neither fortune nor misfortune is treated as a final verdict on worth. Mortality sharpens this understanding. The Stoics spoke of death not morbidly, but honestly. Death is not a possibility, it is a certainty. To live as if it were not distorts priorities. Trivial concerns are inflated, resentments are prolonged, courage is postponed. Awareness of death is not meant to create urgency or fear. It is meant to create proportion. When time is understood as limited, attention becomes more deliberate. Energy is no longer wasted on endless comparison or grievance. You choose actions that align with character rather than ego. Many modern anxieties come from living as if time were infinite and control were absolute. Neither is true. When this is accepted, a quiet seriousness replaces frantic striving. You begin to ask not how to win every moment, but how to act well in this one. Loss tests this most severely. Loss of people, loss of roles, loss of identity. Stoicism does not numb the pain of loss. It frames it. What you love was never owned. It was entrusted temporarily. Grief is the cost of having cared. It is not a mistake, but prolonged despair often comes from the belief that what was given was guaranteed. This perspective does not make love colder. It makes it more honest. You love fully while accepting vulnerability. You engage deeply while knowing separation is possible. This balance prevents both emotional withdrawal and emotional collapse. Injustice remains a reality that challenges acceptance. The Stoic response is neither resignation nor rage. It is commitment without illusion. You work toward what is just, knowing results may be incomplete. You act without guaranteeing success. You refuse to let moral effort depend on certainty of outcome. This is difficult because the mind craves assurance that effort will be rewarded. Stoicism removes that bargain. Virtue is not a transaction. It is a standard of conduct, independent of recognition. You act well because it is right, not because it ensures victory. In a chaotic world, this stance provides stability. You are not waiting for the world to become fair before behaving with integrity. You do not suspend discipline until conditions improve. You bring order inwardly first, then act outwardly as conditions allow. Fate may obstruct your plans. It cannot obstruct your character unless you allow it. This is the Stoic core. External events can shape circumstances, but they do not dictate who you become. That responsibility remains internal until the end. When this is understood, fear of the future loosens its grip. The future is no longer treated as a threat that must be controlled, but as a field in which character will be tested. You do not need to predict every outcome. You need to be prepared to respond well. Preparedness, in Stoic terms, is not constant vigilance or anxiety. It is trust in your capacity to meet what comes with reason and restraint. This trust is built through daily practice, through honest self-examination, through correction without self-contempt. The modern world will not slow down. Uncertainty will not disappear. Injustice will not resolve completely. Aging will continue. None of this prevents a composed life. What prevents it is the refusal to accept these conditions as real. The Stoic does not ask for an easier world. He asks for a stronger mind. Control over the world has always been limited. This is not a modern problem. What is modern is the expectation that it should be otherwise, that with enough information, reaction, visibility, or force of will, uncertainty should yield. It never has. It never will. Stoicism offers a quieter ambition, not to dominate events, but to meet them without losing yourself, not to silence chaos, but to remain steady within it. This steadiness is not inherited. It is built slowly, daily, through attention, restraint, and honest self-governance. When you master your judgments, the world loses much of its power to disturb you. When you master your desires, circumstances lose their ability to dictate your worth. When you master your reactions, other people lose their ability to command your inner state. This does not make life effortless, it makes it workable. The Stoics never promised comfort, they promised clarity. Clarity about what belongs to you and what does not. Clarity about where effort is meaningful and where it is wasted. Clarity about the kind of person you choose to be, regardless of condition. A calm mind is not passive, it is precise. It chooses its battles carefully. It acts without illusion and rests without guilt. It understands that dignity is maintained, not by winning every struggle, but by refusing to abandon reason when pressure mounts. You do not need perfect discipline to begin. You need sincerity, a willingness to observe your reactions without defense, a willingness to correct without self-hatred, a willingness to accept reality without surrendering responsibility. The world will continue to test you. That is not a flaw, it is the arena. Mastery is not proven in isolation, but in contact with difficulty. If this way of thinking speaks to you, if you are seeking steadiness rather than stimulation, clarity rather than noise, this channel exists for that purpose, not to escape the world, but to engage it without being consumed.
Begin where control truly lies.